Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a quiet revolution that's happening right now to protect the very systems that deliver your water, your power, and your money. But here's the twist. In the race to make everything safer, we might be creating a brand new and very human weak point. Let's start with a thought experiment. What if the power went out tomorrow and it wasn't coming back on? It seems like a simple question, right? But the consequences spiral out of control almost instantly, because this is about so much more than just the lights going out.
What happens next is a terrifying domino effect. Without power, there's no clean water. Without networks, communication just dies. Banking systems, logistics, emergency services, they all depend on just a handful of these core systems. A single failure can literally trigger a societal collapse.
These interconnected systems, these are our invisible lifelines. This is what we call critical infrastructure. And right now, governments all around the world are in the middle of a quiet revolution, completely rethinking how to protect them from a whole new generation of threats.
So, let's get into it. What exactly are we talking about when we say invisible lifelines? Well, the answer has gotten a lot bigger and way more complicated than you probably think.
We're going to use Australia as our main case study here, because in the wake of huge events like the pandemic and all those supply chain shocks, they, and a lot of other nations, to be fair, have radically expanded what they consider critical. It's not just about power plants and shipping ports anymore, not by a long shot.
And the reason for this huge expansion, it's because the threats themselves have completely evolved. We're not just talking about a bomb or a hurricane anymore. The threats today are way more complex, they're digital, and a lot of the time, they're completely invisible. We're talking about everything from sophisticated cyber attacks and foreign interference to these hidden vulnerabilities buried deep inside our global supply chains.
Okay, so you're facing all these new, modern, networked threats. What do you do? Well, Australia looked at its old security rulebook and basically decided it was obsolete. So they didn't just update it, they threw the whole thing out and wrote a new one from scratch. And the scale of this change is just massive. We're not talking about a small tweak here. They went from protecting just 4 sectors, like electricity and water, to over 11 sectors, covering 22 different types of assets. The entire philosophy has flipped, you know? It's gone from just reacting to physical threats to proactively trying to manage every potential hazard.
Right, and at the very heart of all this is a brand new concept they're calling the positive security obligation. So what does that mean? It basically forces companies to stop just waiting around for something to go wrong. Now they are legally required to be on the offense, actively hunting for risks, reporting incidents, and proving that they have a solid security program in place. It is absolutely not optional anymore.
And that idea works hand in hand with another huge shift, the all-hazards approach. This means security teams can't just stay in their own lane anymore. They have to think about everything. I'm talking a flood, a hacker, a disgruntled employee, even a single weak link in a supply chain thousands of miles away. It all has to be part of the plan now.
You can see what the government is trying to do here, right? Their goal is what they call a wholesale uplift in security for the entire nation. And look, that's a noble and totally necessary goal. But, and this is a big but, this incredible ambition has created a massive and kind of unexpected new problem.
And this, right here, is where our story takes a really critical turn. Because you have these incredibly ambitious new laws, but they raise a very important and very human question.
Let's try thinking about our infrastructure in a different way for a second. Think of it like a living organism. It needs constant care just to survive, right? It needs to be fed with maintenance and repairs, and that care has to be guided by expert hands.
So that brings up the big question. Who are these caretakers? Who are the experts on the ground that are actually responsible for putting these incredibly complex, all-hazards, proactive security programs into practice?
And this leads us to the central, really provocative question being asked here. Is our current workforce actually ready for this? Are the people we're trusting to protect our most vital systems truly qualified for this new era? Or are we just relying on outdated knowledge and, some fancy-looking but superficial credentials? Because, let's be clear, these new laws demand a completely different kind of professional. We're talking about people with advanced, verifiable qualifications. They need a deep, technical understanding of how all these complex systems are networked together. And they need the ability to move way beyond surface-layer threat analysis and actually provide hard evidence for their security decisions. Now, what makes this whole problem even worse is something pretty fundamental. It turns out there isn't even an agreement on what the word security really means. The government, the corporations, and the security professionals on the ground, they all have slightly different definitions. And that, as you can imagine, creates massive confusion and some really dangerous gaps between what the law says and what actually happens in practice.
So, where does this all lead? What's the ultimate consequence of having this huge gap between the ambition of the law and the actual real-world capabilities of the people on the ground?
Well, it creates a really dangerous paradox. Think about it. These ambitious new laws were designed to make our critical systems more resilient. But if you don't have a workforce with the advanced skills needed to implement them correctly, the laws could just create more confusion, more misinterpretation, and in the end, they could actually make our systems more fragile.
You know, we spend so much time and energy worrying about the next big cyber attack or some kind of major technological failure. But what if we're looking in the wrong place? What if the real weak point, the biggest vulnerability of all, isn't technological at all? What if it's simply a gap in human expertise?
And that leaves us with one final provocative thought to chew on. In our rush to secure all our systems, is it possible that our greatest liability isn't the infrastructure itself, but the humans tasked with protecting it? Maybe, just maybe, securing our invisible lifelines isn't just about building stronger firewalls and higher fences. Maybe it's about building smarter, more qualified, and truly expert people to manage them.